Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Becky and today we are going to be playing with the Winsor Newton Designer gouache set. I've got a set of 10 gouaches here. This is an artist grade gouache, and from what I can tell, the difference between an artist grade gouache and a student grade gouache is that the artist grade gouache is much more light fast. These all have light fast ratings on them, whereas the student grade gouaches often don't really have a light fastness rating, which just means that if it's put out in the sun, in direct sunlight, the colors are going to fade more over time. Some of the artist grade gouaches are going to fade over time just because of the pigments that are in them, and there's not really a whole lot that they can do about it. But in general, the colors are going to stay much more light fast overall. The other gouaches that I have used in this series have been student grade gouaches. So I just wanted to see if, as an amateur artist, I could really tell the difference in using an artist grade gouache versus a student grade gouache. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to go ahead and paint another mushroom just like the others. Partly because that way I'll have a nice series of mushroom paintings, and partly because I really wanted to be able to kind of compare apples to apples, as it were, or mushrooms to mushrooms. So we're going to get right to it, and we'll head on over so you can see me paint that mushroom. All right, so here is the Winsor Newton Designer's gouache. This is an professional grade gouache. So it has... the pigments are more color fast. So or light fast, I mean. So if I made a painting with these paints and it ended up in direct sunlight, the colors would stay good longer. Not all colors are like super light fast, and that's just has to do with the pigment it's made out of. So you will find that some colors are going to be more light fast than others, just in general, even if you get artist grade. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these tubes. Oh, careful. I'm going to grab this primary blue. And go ahead and toss a little bit of this on my brush. And kind of dry my brush off so that I get more of a fair comparison here. So I started with a dry brush with the Ryan nickel and with the Hemi. So again, it's going to take some paint straight from the tube and do this first swipe. That feels really nice. It's creamy and give good coverage there. So now we'll do the same thing here. Put a little on my palette and then play with making a gradient, adding a little water to it and making it maybe closer to where I might want to use it. And again, as an amateur, I don't really know like the right water to paint ratio just yet. So I'm learning that, and I've used the Hemi gouache more often than anything else. So I kind of know what that feels like for me to feel good. So again, with all of them, when you added a little bit of water, it does that thing where it doesn't get good coverage. And it might be just because I'm not loading my paintbrush up enough with paint. I don't know. So I'm going to load up a little bit more here and just a tiny bit of water and see what that looks like. And see, now I got better coverage there. And it glides across really nicely, whereas this, there was a little bit of drag. But if you add a little water, your paintbrush glides across easier. So I'm just going to keep adding water as I work my way down. And I'll work my way back up just to kind of blend this out. So again, that dried relatively quickly. I could feel that it was getting drier up here. All right, now we're done with that initial test of the gouache. We're going to get right into the painting. As you can see, I've skipped ahead to the part where I already had the base colors down because that's really pretty boring, just kind of blocking in the colors, and I wanted to get straight into the painting. One of the first things that I ended up doing was redoing the stem of the mushroom because I didn't like the color that I picked. It was kind of more of a fleshy color, and I just felt like it was a little bit too brown. So I went over it with white. I ended up going over this, I don't know, 3 or 4 different times throughout the entire painting process. I think I may have chopped part of that out so you don't have to see me do that every time. But yeah, so then I just go in and just start adding details, adding shading, that sort of thing. So far, I'm liking the gouache. One of the issues that I was having, however, was with the white gouache, and it may very well have been user error. Like I said, I was trying to cover up the stem of the mushroom with white, and it was not turning white. It just kept being that beige color, and I was getting a little bit frustrated with it, so I would try and cover it up with white and then go off and do something else, and then try and cover it up with white and go off and do something else. This may have been because I had the gouache a little bit too thin, and I know that putting a thin layer of gouache over a thicker layer of gouache isn't going to work the way you want it to. It's most likely going to reactivate the layer underneath, and that's probably what I was doing. In the end, I did get the stem to be white the way I wanted it to be, but part of that might have been because I added a little bit of black to it to get some shading in there. I'm not really sure. Overall, it ended up working. I'm not going to blame the gouache for this, though. It may very well have been user error. At this point, I'm putting all of the white spots on top of the mushroom, and again, I have the issue of the white being not as opaque as I wanted it to be, but again, this may be user error. I may be putting a thinner coat of gouache on top of the paint, and I know that that means that the layer underneath can either A, reactivate, or B, shine through. So I do end up having to go back and put another layer of white over top of these spots, which ends up working out in my favor, but it was a little bit annoying that I had to do that. Again, I'm not ready to blame the gouache for that. It's likely user error. Hey, at this point, I'm going to try some experiments. I want to get like a mossy texture in the green area. I'm not really sure what else is going to work, so I'm going to try a couple of things out. One of them is I'm going to try this toothbrush. I'm going to just kind of dip it into the gouache and dab it on there and see if I can get kind of a moss texture. So I don't have to necessarily paint all of the moss individually. So you might see me doing stuff like that and then going back over it. It's just because I decided to try an experiment and see how it works. I don't know if this is going to work, but fingers crossed that it does. So yeah, I tried the toothbrush in order to get a texture on there very simply. It ends up being, you can see some of the texture a little bit, but I didn't really like it. So I do end up having to go in and paint all of that moss by hand. But the nice thing is doing that moss was kind of repetitive, and so it was very relaxing to do. So I do end up really enjoying how the moss turns out. I'm sure the change that you just saw to that painting was pretty drastic, but I really wasn't liking how the blue sky was looking behind it. It made the mushroom just feel enormous, and I didn't want it to feel like it was a giant, like 3-story mushroom. So I just went with kind of that dark background. And the other reason for it was it now goes with the other mushrooms better. So now I'll have 3 pieces that kind of work better together because they all have that dark kind of background, so it looks like you're looking into a forest, that sort of thing. So sometimes you start with one idea and then find out, it's just not working. And so you just got to shift gears. And I did, and I'm happy that I did. And so now let's try and finish this up and hope it turns out nice. All right, we're on about take 347 of the stem of this mushroom. This time I actually do think I get it right. I end up putting a lot more white on top, as well as putting a little bit of black in there in order to get some shading in. So overall, like I said earlier, I do end up liking it. It does end up looking the way I wanted it to, but I did struggle with that a lot. Time for the best part, tape removal. And now for the sexy final shots. All right, well, the mushroom is done, and here is what it looks like. I am very happy with this. It started off looking a little bit rough, and after I had the colors blocked in, I felt like the mushroom looked like it was like 30 feet tall, and that's why you saw me paint over the blue sky with kind of a darker background, so it made it look kind of more like it was in the forest, so it looks kind of more normal sized mushroom instead of a giant mushroom, because I didn't want it to be a giant one. But overall, using the gouaches was very similar to the other gouaches. It was thicker. Just out of the tube, it was much thicker than, say, the Royal Langnickel gouache. It's kind of hard to say whether it was thicker or not from the Miyahime gouache because, like I said, that gouache is a little bit older for me. So I mean, overall, I think it was fun to use. I will definitely continue to use it. Whether it's worth the money to buy the Winsor Newton Designer gouache as an amateur artist, I would probably say no. You can get a lot more colors and a lot easier gouache to use if you went with something like the Miyahime jelly gouache. And I assume other jelly gouaches are probably pretty good as well. I think that is a great gouache to start with. So I would still continue to recommend the Miyahime gouache because, like I said, I just think it is going to be a much better bang for your buck, especially as an amateur artist. Anyway, that is my my painting with the Winsor and Newton gouache and kind of my overall review of it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I definitely am very happy with the final result, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.